Ethics. Biological survival and the hedonic response. Ethics is the study of the nature of proper choice and conduct, specifically as such choice and conduct affects sentient beings. Ethics is sometimes referred to as moral philosophy. It tries to identify methods for properly choosing actions which are the best, optimum, most ethical, or most moral, out of the available possible choices. To put this in prescriptive ethical terms, it tries to describe that which one should, or ought to, do. It would be pointless, however, to attempt to prescribe how human beings should make choices, in the absence of understanding how they actually do make choices. To ignore how humans actually do make choices, is to ignore reality, and thus to venture into mysticism. The only empiricorational approach is to observe and understand how humans actually do make choices, and then to examine the possibility of uncovering methods for optimizing this process. The activities of all sentient beings, i.e., all beings which experience pleasure and pain, are guided by the experience of pleasure and pain, in such a manner that they are driven toward pleasure, and away from pain. This fundamental, inescapable drive, may be referred to as the pleasure-pain response, or the hedonic response. All biological organisms which can feel pleasure and pain, are driven toward pleasure, and away from pain. Due to the mechanism of biological evolution, those things which tend to enhance survival, tend to be biologically associated with pleasure, and those things which tend to hinder survival, tend to be biologically associated with pain. Creatures which found pleasure in contra-survival things, or pain in pro-survival things, would tend to live shorter, and have less opportunities to replicate their genetic variations which would give rise to contra-survival pleasure-pain associations. Creatures which found pleasure in pro-survival things, and pain in contra-survival things, however, would tend to live longer, and therefore have more opportunities to replicate their genetic variations, which would give rise to pro-survival pleasure-pain associations. It would not take many generations at all, before a pro-survival hedonic response was essentially universally present amongst all descendants. There have been billions of years of biological evolution on Earth. It is important to note, however, that pleasure and pain are not, and cannot be, the ultimate criteria of the survival value of an activity or thing. A drug, for example, may induce a great amount of immediate pleasure, even euphoria, but the same drug, taken to excess, may also lead to overdose and death. Furthermore, there are some individuals who take a sort of masochistic pleasure from the experience of certain forms of pain. Thus it can be seen that while the hedonic response originated as an essentially automatic survival mechanism, there are many situations where survival considerations go beyond a mere reaction to pleasure or pain. If pleasure and pain were the ultimate criteria of survival, it would never have been necessary for life to evolve beyond the simplest of sensory organisms. It is ultimately the responsibility of conceptually conscious beings, such as humans, to learn to properly evaluate the true survival value of various activities and things. It is important to recognize that such proper evaluation does not proceed automatically, but requires honest, integrated effort. Free will. The pleasure-pain response, i.e., the hedonic response, guides the activities of all creatures which are capable of experiencing pleasure and pain, but it operates differently in purely sensory, perceptual, and conceptual consciousness. Purely sensory consciousness merely reacts, in automatic response, to the sensory pleasure or pain of the immediate moment. Perceptually and conceptually conscious entities, on the other hand, make all choices by selecting, from the recognized available options, that option which is mentally associated with pleasure or pain, in such a manner that the thought of choosing it provides the chooser with greater immediate pleasure, or less pain, than the thought of choosing any other option. This is the hedonic response, as applied to both perceptual and conceptual entities. Perceptually conscious entities, including very young humans, are unable to modify their own mental associations, except in relatively rudimentary ways, and thus their thoughts and activities are automatically determined by biological instinct and social conditioning. At the level of conceptual consciousness, however, it becomes possible for the mind to intentionally modify its own internal integrations and associations, thus potentiating a degree of choice, which is both quantitatively and qualitatively beyond that of lower levels of consciousness. Conceptual consciousness allows human beings to intentionally modify their own thinking and behaviors, far beyond both their inherent, inborn, biological instincts, and their learned, social conditioning. Thus, human beings possess free will, in a way that lower creatures do not, and it is their conceptual ability which makes free will possible. This is not to say that human choice is simply random in nature, nor is it undetermined or outside of the physical laws governing the universe. After all, the mind is a product of the brain, a physical structure operating according to physical laws. Free will simply means that human conceptual consciousness allows humans to understand their own choices, and their own choice-making processes, in ways which other, non-conceptual animals simply cannot, and that this leads to a qualitatively different type of choice-making. Even with conceptual abilities and the understandings which come with them, however, humans still do make all choices by selecting, from the recognized available options, that option which is mentally associated with pleasure or pain, in such a manner that the thought of choosing it provides the chooser with greater immediate pleasure, or less pain, than the thought of choosing any other option. In the next section of this exposition of psionics, we will see that humans even have the ability to modify their minds to quite a large degree, regarding the hedonic value they derive from the thoughts of choosing various options.
Thank you for watching. Please help spread our message by liking and sharing this video, and by subscribing to our channel. Please also visit our website, Scionics.org, and register to join the Scio-Society for free. You can also help support our cause directly, by donating through our website. We sincerely hope you will be a part of our effort to bring about the positive revolutionary transformation of the psionics protocols.